The Siege of Mantua was a 4-month effort by the Austrian army to regain a presence in northern Italy after being excluded from the region by Napoleon Bonaparte through the successful French Siege of Mantua in 1797. In April 1799, the Austrians placed a military blockade around Mantua as part of the War of the Second Coalition with the intent of withering the French by attrition. While the diminishing food supplies and losses weakened the French army, the Austrians received reinforcements and attacked on the 4th of July 1799. By the end of the month, the French agreed to surrender. Prelude. By 1799, the fortress of Mantua on the river Mincio in northern Italy was in poor shape. It was commanded by Viscount Lieutenant General François-Philippe de Fouissec-Latour and garrisoned by a diverse force of 10,000, including French, Polish, Italian, Swiss and German units. For the beginning of his assignment, Fouissec-Latour, an engineer, was convinced that the fortress would be indefensible in any serious siege. In April, Austrian forces approached Mantua and started their siege. At first, the Austrians were content to simply blockade the fortress, but with the artillery duels and occasional skirmishes, attrition began taking its toll on the defenders. The defenders were also weakened by diminishing food supplies, and the morale was undermined by lack of payment. On the 18th of June, the French suffered a defeat at the Battle of Trebia, and consequently the Austrians were able to move more decisively against Mantua. On the 4th of July the siege entered a new stage, with Austrian reinforcements arriving, and the besieging force growing from 8,000 to 40,000. The Austrians were commanded by Hungarian General Baron Paul von Kray, an artillery expert. Artillery bombardment was constant. On 24–25 July the assault begun, and the Austrians slowly advanced over the next few days. On the 27th of July Fouissec-Latour began negotiating surrender terms. Capitulation. The Austrians agreed to release most of the French garrison, keeping the offices for 3 months, and with soldiers pledging not to take arms until the prisoners were exchanged by the fighting sides. In a secret protocol, however, the Austrians demanded full sovereignty over deserters from the Austrian army. After protests from the Polish officers, who were afraid that due to recent partitions of Poland in which Austria gained control over parts of Poland, that the Austrians may want to take custody of the Polish legionnaires, the Austrian negotiator clarified officially that they meant any deserters from the current Austrian army or former Austrian soldiers serving in the Cisalpine Republic army. On the 30th of July the French and Allied troops left the fortress. The garrison troops were split into French and non-French units. The Austrian soldiers observing the marching non-French garrison troops were given permission to physically assault those recognized as deserters, and most of them were eventually arrested. Polish officers, particularly those from the Austrian partition, were forced to enlist in the Austrian army or deported to partitioned Poland, and a similar fate befell Polish NCOs and regular soldiers, many of whom were also forced to suffer physical punishment by being beaten with rods. This marked the end of the Second Legion of the Polish legions. Fouissec-Latour was later criticized by the Poles for what they considered betrayal, but also by the French. For his surrender, Napoleon himself ordered Fouissec-Latour stricken from the list of generals and forbade him to wear a military uniform.